Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to what is actually recap session number 5. You've made it all the way to the 5th video, so congratulations, nice work. So, what we're going to be covering today will actually make a lot of sense to people who actually haven't taken the PyCrafters class yet. So if you've been watching this, the recap videos on YouTube, and you haven't been a PyCrafters student, then this video is going to make a lot of sense to you. If you are a PyCrafters student, this is going to be reviewed, it's going to be a recap session, but it's also going to be a lot of new stuff because we haven't really gone into very much detail on this topic. What we're going to be covering today is CSS, and more specifically how we can use CSS to work with our HTML website. So we're going to take between 15 and 20 minutes, maybe actually a little longer, and go through just a ton of CSS stuff, so you guys, hopefully by the end of this, will feel pretty comfortable with CSS. What I recommend for this video is that you don't just watch, I want you to also do it. So while you're watching this, pause it every so often, I'll tell you when to pause, and follow along with me. Add your own CSS style sheets, add some styles, and experiment with it. That's really the best way to learn CSS, HTML, pretty much any language. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started working with CSS. Let's go ahead. Okay, so to start off, we're going to go to a website that I created, and I showed this actually in the first recap session, or at least I showed the link to it. So let's go ahead and do that now in case you missed that or you didn't write it down. It is bruce773.github.io/test01 underbar. That underbar is kind of hard to see, but if I hover over that, there is an underbar there. Web page. So if I just go ahead and grab this, copy it, and I'm going to open up my web browser. I'm going to just paste it in. And this is the website that you should be able to go to. So if you haven't gotten that link, go ahead and pause the video now, copy this in. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you have that. Alright, so now we're going to go over to CSS. And this is where you're going to find all of the things that will help you out if you're having questions with CSS or issues. So I would check here first. If you can't find the answer, Slack as always. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about 3 different ways you can work with CSS. We have inline, embedded, and external. So we first have to know, before we get into that actually, let's talk about what CSS is. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. So as usual with all these acronyms, we want to think of one of these 3 letters should stand out to us. And in this case, like HTML, it's actually 2 of these. It's the 2 S's. We have style sheets. Cascading bit, that doesn't really help us right now. But in order to remember what CSS is, we should think of style sheets. Essentially, CSS gives us complete control over how our website looks, and we get to style it in any way that we want to. As you can see, this is a header. And in fact, I can actually look at my source code by clicking View Page Source. And if I want to look for the word the basics, if I go ahead and let's see if I can find it. It might be a little tricky to find. Here it is, the basics. I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see this pretty well. And where did it go? Here it is. This whole thing right here. This is actually an H3. I have an H3 that says the basics. Don't mind this bit in here. This is just that little icon that you see next to it. That there. That's all that this is. But we have our H3 and it says the basics. But you'll notice this doesn't really look like our H3s. In fact, let's go ahead and open up our web page right now. And you can see here is, I believe that's our H3. We can take a look. If we do inspect, we can in fact see, yes, that is our H3. But that H3 looks nothing like this H3. So what's going on here? Well, you can probably guess. That's CSS. That is the power of CSS. It lets us do that. It also lets us change the color and all these things. So how can we use CSS? There are three ways. What we have, the three ways pretty much are, like I said before, inline, embedded, and external. So the first two are actually in here. So let's look at the inline styling. For inline styling, we can literally take the CSS code and drop it right in that line, in the same line that we want to affect. So if we wanted to change our font color to red and our font weight to normal, which font weight would make it not bold, would make it bold or not bold. Let's grab this color red. So I'm going to copy that code, and I'm going to open up my Finder window. This is my website here from a desktop, and I'm going to right click and open with Sublime Text. And once that opens up, oops, can I open it? Let me go to, I'm going to open it directly. So this is good. You're actually going to see where I have it here. It's on my desktop. There we go, and that's what we were going for. So this is, as you can see, the code we created before. So all that amounts to this here, without that. This is what we created in our last application video. What we're going to do now is we want to, what should we change? I think we're going to change this to blue, or make it nice green to match our leaves. So let's change this. So I'm going to do style equals color and green, and save that. Open our web page, refresh, and ta-da! You can see it is green. Yay! Okay, excellent. So we know that that works, and that again was called inline styling, because we're literally putting CSS in the same line that we want to affect. Alright, so let me kind of show you and give you a brief idea of why we would want to use CSS. Essentially, imagine that we have a lot of CSS code on our website. And let's actually view this page source, and I'm going to give you some ideas here. Let's say that, actually I'm going to do it on this code. Alright, so let's say that we want to change all of our headers to a, let's see, we'll make them all green. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have color and green. There we go. Now I do it again. Style and color green. Now you may be asking yourself, why don't you just copy and paste? Well, okay, good idea. Let's do that. So I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to copy that, and we're going to put it down here again. Now we have to put a space, save that. And here's another one right here. Okay, great. There we go. And we'll save that. Whew! Okay. Now if we save that and we look here, you'll find that all of our headers are green. Yay! So it worked. What's the problem though? You can probably guess by now that doing this is not the correct way. In fact, it is really a way that everybody tries to avoid, and for good reason. One of the most important reasons is it wastes so much time. We had to go to every single header and put in this same line of code. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times. That's a little redundant, and redundancy is something you always want to avoid when it comes to coding. So that's one reason. Another good reason for avoiding this inline styling is, what if we wanted to change this color from green to blue? Well, here's what I'd have to do. And I think I've got them all. Alright, so now we save, we go back, and you can see it worked. But do you see how much time it took? Now imagine for a second that this wasn't my only page, that I had more pages just like this one with different information on it, and I wanted to change all the headers to the same color. Well, then I'd have to go into every single HTML file and change their color. Now I'm going to change this back because I like my green. I think I got them all. There we go. That's another reason. What if I missed some? what if I accidentally forgot the one at the bottom? Well, I'd be pulling my hair out trying to find where I missed that style equals color green. So there's several reasons to do that, or to avoid this sort of inline styling. So you're saying to yourself right now, okay, so I know it's not a good practice to get into to do inline styling. When's a good time to use it? That is a great question. In fact, I can show you an example of a good time to use it down below, once I remove all these. Notice I have here, style equals display inline block. We're going to talk about inline block in a minute, but here is actually a good time to use this inline styling, because I'm really just doing this once, and I just wanted a quick fix to actually fix my list items. And I can show you, whoops, I can show you that here. I needed to just make my list items move over here like so. And you'll remember that from the last application video. So that was actually a good time to use inline styling, but that's probably one of the only times you want to use it. In small cases where you just want to do a quick fix and it doesn't have to be site-wide. So let's look at some of the other options. So that's called inline styling. Now let's look at our other one, which is embedded styling. So what we're going to do is we are actually going to go into the head, and for the second time in our 5 videos that I've created here, we are actually going to use this head, which is pretty cool. We finally get to use it for something other than the title. So I'm going to go below the title, and this might be something you guys want to do. I'm going to put in style, and I'm going to put this down here. Okay. And I'm going to, I like to space these out. Now, here's where I can put in my CSS code. And this is where you're actually going to see some CSS code. So in order to do this, I have to talk to you guys a little bit about what selectors are. So I'm going to create a selector, and you don't have to know what this is yet. We're going to talk about selectors. Okay? I want to change H1 colors to red. Alright, so what is a selector? Essentially, this is a selector, this entire section right here. This selector is selecting all of our H1s, and you see when I highlight that, it highlights all of our H1s. I don't see any others, so this must be the only H1 on the page. So this one's only going to affect that one. So if I save and I open up my web page here, you can see, there we go. PyCrafters is now in red. So this is a selector, and since we're selecting all of our H1s, we're targeting our H1s, this is called an H1 selector. Now, if I were to do the same thing and I wanted to create an H2 selector, well, I could do that as well. Color, red, there we go. Save, and now if I go back in, you'll see my H2 is also there. Alright, so I want my H3s to be red as well. Alright, color, red. Save. And you can see automatically all my H3s are selected and are being given the property of red. Color, red. This is a property, by the way. So here we have our selectors, and inside those selectors we have our properties that we're affecting. So we're going to select the element, and then we're going to assign or change that element's property, whatever property we put in here. In this case, I'm changing the color property to red for all the H3s, color property to red for the H2s, and the color property to red for the H1s. So yeah, this is a little better. I only have to type it in 3 times instead of 5. If I had several more headers, this would make a lot of sense. But this still is quite a lot of work for just the headers. If I wanted each header type to be a different color, this would make sense. If I wanted my H1s to be blue, I could do that. And my H2s to be green, I could also do that. And my H3s to be, shall we say, what's another color? Yellow, maybe? I think. Save. If I wanted to do that, I could. Oh, it's a little hard to read, but there you go. You see it worked. We have blue, green, and these are yellow. So our selector is working. However, it's a little redundant if we want them all to be the same color. In this case, yes, this would work. But let's say we want them all to be green, like we had before, which was really quite nice. In that case, we have to make a global selector. So we would put H, and I can actually show you what we're doing here. We have our H1. So these are called global selectors. Let's in fact do this. H1, H2, H3. Now we can give them property of color and green. Not freen, green. There we go. Save. And if we open this up, notice they all now have green. So I was wrong in calling this a global selector. This is a global selector, but before, when we had these all lined up, they were all global selectors as well. So this is a global selector, and this is a global selector, and whoops, and this is a global selector. So you kind of get the idea. Those are all global selectors, including this one here, because it is a global selector, and it's globally selecting all of these. Alright, so global as opposed to what? Why are we saying global selector? Aren't they just regular selectors? Well, they are not. If we wanted to create a selector that was not global, we'd have to create what's called a class. So let's create a class, and I'm going to talk about what classes are in a minute. Now, before we move on to classes, though, I do want to show you that we can affect any of these, any of the elements on this page. So we can add, if we put a comma here, we can say P. So if we wanted to change our paragraph tag, so if you look here, we have a paragraph. Now it's green. It's hard to see, but it is now green. Same color as that one. So it doesn't just affect headers. We can select any element. If we wanted to make the whole body green, so if we put body, color, green, save, refresh, and everything now is green, including our list items, our paragraph. That's globally selecting everything in the body. So if I were to change that, and I change this to blue, save, everything including our headers turns to blue. Now why do you suppose that is? Well, CSS works precedently, which means the lower ones here are going to take precedence over the higher ones. So these ones here, whichever ones are below, are going to overwrite the ones above it. So if I put P tag and then color blue, save, I think you'll see that our paragraph I'm sorry. It's not a very good illustration if it's already blue. Let's change it to red. There we go. Ready? There. So now our paragraph tag is red, but everything else is blue. Now why is that? Well, that's because our body is selecting everything, and then down here we specifically state our paragraph, which overwrites this one. So it's only overwriting its own thing, which means only the paragraphs are going to be red. I think maybe I'm going a little overboard here in explaining this to you, but hopefully you get the idea, and I haven't completely confused you at this point. If I have, go ahead and rewatch this segment up until now, and hopefully you are not completely confused. So we've just talked about global selectors, and we've talked about how they can affect every one of these, okay? All the elements on the page. Now we're going to talk about a non-global selector, or a class. So let's go ahead and create a class. To create a class, we use a period, and then we use the class name. And usually we name it after what we want to do with it. So I'm going to call this one color red. No spaces. We never want to use spaces. Usually with CSS we use a hyphen or a dash. In any other language we're going to use camel case, which we'll get into in future episodes. So now we've created a class and we've called it color red. So probably when I reference this one, I'm going to want it to make colors red. So we're going to copy this class name. And I want to assign this class to our ordered list. So here's our ordered list. We're going to say the class is equal to, and then the name of our class that we created, which in this case is color-red. Now we save this, and we should see our ordered list red. There we go. So now our ordered list is red. We're still good. So now we have actually non-globally selected our ordered list with a class. So why would a class be useful? Well, in order to do that, I'm going to make a few things color of red. So I'm going to make class, and I'm going to give a couple of things. No, undo that. Color, and you see my IDE is already trying to help me out here. -red. Save H3. There, that H3 is red. I'm going to, let's see, make this one have a class color red. So now I think I changed one. Yep, changed that. So now you can see I have a few things that are the color of red, and I've selected them using my class. So now let's say I don't like them being the color red. Let's change that color. We don't have to change the class name. We just have to change the property in the class name, or inside of the class. I'm going to change them to blue. So I'm going to save this and open up our web page. And you can see everything I selected with the class is now blue instead of red. So you can really see how powerful CSS is by allowing us to change things like that on the fly. It's really amazing that we can do that without having to go to every single one of those elements and change their properties directly. We can now just use a class and just change it right up here. So that is the benefit, a very large benefit of using CSS. Now you have to realize that this is not the only property we can do. There are hundreds of properties that we can affect, and you'll only find a few of them on my website here, but you will find more than I've talked about so far. So I would highly recommend looking at this. I have a long list of things here. One thing I want to bring up real quick is this text align. Text align will do the same thing as our center tag, which, as I said, the center tag is antiquated and is not really being used anymore, this center tag here, because of CSS. We don't really need this anymore, and the property that replaces it in CSS is this text align property. So I can, in fact, and I'm going to do this now, and I highly recommend you do the same. Go and create a global body selector, and we're going to say text-align center. Now, save that. Get rid of your center tag, top and bottom. And notice how everything is centered here. And here's what we're going to do. Refresh. And you'll notice nothing changed. That's because it's our text align center property is being assigned and applied to this entire page. We can actually look at this and see, using Google, there's actually a really great tool that allows us to see what elements are being assigned what CSS property. So we can actually go up here, and this says select an element on the page to inspect it. So if I wanted to inspect this H1, or let's say this H1, yeah, and see what properties are being assigned to it, I can click it. It highlights it in here, showing me exactly where it is, and it tells me what CSS properties are being applied to it. So as you can see, all of these different H1 properties are default to the browser. So we can actually see all of the things that our browser is automatically doing to our H1. So if we wanted to change this to not, whoops, oh, I can't really change it right now. That's okay. If we want to, oh, here we go. Let's see if we can No, that's not going to let us. Sometimes you can actually change that, but I forget how to do that now. So I'm going to put this at the bottom so we can see things a little easier. So what we have is we can actually see all the CSS properties being applied to whichever element we select. We can deselect this color, and you'll notice now our H1s, H2s, and H3s are no longer green. We click it again, and now they are. So we can actually look at our body, and we can see that we have our text aligned center. That's actually what we created here. If we go up to the top, there it is. That's what we created. If we were to take this off, you can see that CSS has turned off this property, and now everything is off to the side. If we turn this back on, now it's back. So that is one of the great ways to use CSS on your web page now with what you have, and I highly recommend making that change. Now, we can go over a few more of the things in here, but I think you get the idea. CSS is an extremely powerful language, and we've only dipped our toes into what it can do. If you find a property that you think would be cool and you want to see what it does, you can actually grab it from here, copy it, and paste it in this little box here, and it will show you what happens. So as you can see, that's what it did. This is the text that's the style is going to be applied to. If I were to take off the bottom and I were to change this to 4 pixels and I were to make this blue, now I apply it, you can see it's all around the edges, 4 pixels blue, and that is what I did with that. So that's a great way to test out whatever you may be having issues on. I said before I'd be talking about what the display property is, such as inline, block, and inline block. I'm not really going to get into that video in this video because we've already gone through a lot of stuff, and I think that's a little bit out of the scope of this video. If you're curious about inline block, and block level elements, look at this, and I would follow some of these links. This takes you to another page in the site that actually talks about this. I would highly recommend you do that. It's going to be very helpful if you continue working with CSS at all. Alright, so we do have one last thing to talk about, if my page ever loads here. No, I'm going to grab this again and just open this up real quick. My internet is being extremely slow right now. Let's talk, oh, here we go. I think it's going to, there it is. Alright, so we're going to talk about the third and final way to use CSS, and that's called externalized styling using the link element. And that's what we're actually going to do right now. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to open up our file where we had this, and actually we're going to do this from Sublime. So, click File, New File, and hit Control S automatically, and we're going to save it in here as CSS styles. Remember, no spaces if you're creating a file. It's just very inconvenient later on. And make sure you add the extension .css. We're going to create a CSS file inside of our website file folder. So, once we've done that, we can hit save, and we can grab all of the styles we have here, Control X, which means cut, and paste. Now we're going to save it, and save that, very good. And we can remove this style, and what I'd like to do now is link to this. So I'm going to make a link. Link, relationship equals style sheet, type is text / CSS, and our href is actually going to be this. So CSS styles, whoops, one T in styles, .css. Now if I save this, go over to here, refresh the page, you'll notice all of our styles are still here. How can that be? We haven't put them in here at all. Well, we actually have. If I were to comment this line and save this and refresh, notice, my styles are gone. So we can actually see that this style sheet right here is properly linked, and it's affecting this page because when I relink it, everything works just fine. So there you go. We talked about inline, we talked about external, and we talked about internal styling or embedded styling. Whew! Nice work! You made it through a half an hour of straight coding. Excellent job. We went through a ton of stuff today regarding CSS, how powerful it can be with styling your web page, and I hope that by now you understand just how much we can do with this language. It's really unbelievable all the stuff that CSS lets you do. So we talked about external, we talked about inline, and we talked about embedded styling. Out of all of them, external is the most common way to style your website. You'll see inline very, very rarely. I believe I talked about when we would use some inline styling. And as far as embedded styling goes, you're pretty much never going to use that because you can just as easily use the external way of styling, and that's traditionally what everyone does now. So, if you have any questions, which I'm sure you do, like I always say, use the Slack channel. Otherwise, comment under this video if you're watching it on YouTube. If you are watching it on YouTube, we'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe and like the video, and let us know what you want to see more of. I'm going to be posting more recap sessions on Arduino and Python and the Raspberry Pi once we get into that. And so I hope you guys are finding these helpful and are going away with less questions than you had before. Okay, as usual, we will see you guys in class, and we'll hopefully see you in the next recap session.